What was the first time that you met Nicky Lauda?
I was in a Formula ADC Masters. The first thing he said to me before he even shook my hand, just as he sort of got to me, he said, "I loved your father."
Freddie!
Please welcome Freddie Hunt.
Who am I? It's an interesting question, actually. I mean, I left school when I was young to pursue a professional career in polo and then switched to motorsport. No, I didn't know that the drivers had to find the money themselves. I thought, great, I'll go racing, I'll get paid and it'll be wonderful. How wrong was I?
You were sadly only 5 years old when your dad passed away.
People live and they die, and then when people die, it's very sad, but it is part of life, something we've all got to do.
What was your experience when watching Rush for the first time?
They changed a few details, unfortunately, and sort of key details. I don't think they casted Dad very well with Chris Hemsworth. I'm very emotional at the end of the film because it showed a picture of actual Dad, and I wasn't expecting that.
But did that make you miss him more, or miss the fact that you hadn't had that time with him more? Freddie, you carry one of the most iconic names in motor racing. Your father, James Hunt, is remembered as a fearless champion, playboy, and legend. But in your own words, who are you and what do you do?
Who am I? It's an interesting question, actually. How does one answer that? Apart from, my name and kind of, I suppose, somewhat a bit of a loner. I like my own company. But I live on a pretty remote farm in Scotland, but I don't like to be there too much. So I travel around quite a bit, and that's one of the reasons I'm down here, is because seeing friends. I like mostly countryside and nature, and but I guess I'm not easily satisfied with sort of normal day-to-day life. Like, some people can seem to have a normal job and sort of be quite satisfied with that, going to the pub in the evening and holiday once or twice a year. And I'm not really like that. So, I left school when I was young to pursue a professional career in polo and then switched to motorsport. And now I'm running my own fashion brand. So there's lots of different things. And perhaps jack of all trades, master of none, maybe. I don't know.
when I hear you talk about where you currently reside up in the top of Scotland, very remote, kind of on your own, it's a very peaceful existence. And what I find fascinating, though, is running through your veins is clearly an element of speed, precision, competitiveness that you don't necessarily put together with that kind of peaceful environment that you surround yourself with. So what age did you kind of discover that you had this competitive spirit?
Probably really when I started polo after school. I played sports at school, but I was never really a great team sportsman, if you know what I mean. I was always, B team in the rugby. I never played football, but B team in the rugby and stuff. But then when I started playing polo, because I grew up on horses, you see, so I think that's when it really kicked off. I was 13 when I started, and 15 when I started playing tournaments, and 16 I left school to turn professional. And it really is a wonderful sport, and I'd love to play again one day. But
well, two things that horses and vehicles share in common is horsepower, speed, thrill, and danger. Yep. And one of the first times I experienced what it was like to be in old Formula One was actually watching Rush, because I have grown up with the new age of Formula One. I started watching from probably 2011, 2012, and have been hooked ever since the ages of Drive to Survive and the newer stuff. So given that ability to look back on what that racing was like now makes me look twice every time I go past a older style of Formula One car or something a little bit special and think, that's got no traction control, no ABS. That is absolutely raw. Now, that was my experience when watching Rush for the first time. What was yours?
Good movie on the whole. But they changed a few details, unfortunately, and sort of key details, so it didn't really paint the truest picture. And actually, Ron Howard's response when I asked him about that, why did you deviate from the truth? He said, well, the truth was too awesome, people wouldn't believe it. I thought that was just a bit of a strange answer. But, good movie on the whole, but one sad part, I think, I don't think they casted Dad very well with Chris Hemsworth. Daniel Bruhl did a masterpiece of Nicky Lauda, but I don't think Chris quite did Dad justice in terms of he didn't seem to capture his his personality very well. I thought he came across a little bit cocky and arrogant, and I don't think Dad was that. He was more sort of, he was certainly very naughty and mischievous, my father, but he wasn't. He was more humble about it, I think.
Now, I've kind of listened to you saying that before on various podcasts and little clips. I saw you do an interview walking around a golf course once, which was quite fun. You kind of went into that. But I read some of the comments underneath that, and I thought that's how I kind of compile some of my questions today, because I understand if you're kind of watching that off the bat, why some people would think, well, hang on a second. Now, you were sadly only 5 years old when your dad passed away.
Yep.
What is it about then to now that got you to know him so well as a personality?
Mostly just sort of stories from friends and family. I mean, mostly I've learned, I've had a lot from the media. Many things I've had to double fact check myself and stuff like that. Reading his books. There was one book, James Hunt Against All Odds, was written with Dad when he was still alive. That's a great one for information. And some of we do have some of his handwritten notes at home, which is very interesting, is his diaries and stuff like that, which is cool. So yeah, just little bits and pieces over the years, and just hearing stories, even from strangers who had only ever met him once, just hearing nice stories about him, which is.
Would you say that, like, your family would compare you to him often? Do they say that you two are quite similar?
Certainly in looks, yes. Sometimes Mum would stop as if she's seen a ghost. And I think certainly in looks and sort of mannerisms were very similar. I guess in behaviour we're not dissimilar, but we're not the same, of course. So we are fairly similar.
So talk me through ages 0 to 5. Like, we all struggle to remember things back then, but we kind of have moments that we still latch onto, or like little pictures, windows into our earliest years. What was yours?
Honestly, very vague memories, but and I think for the first 3 years of my life, I was sort of handicapped. I had to have an operation at the age of 3 or 4. I don't know exactly. And Mum's gone now, so she can answer. But basically, I had an operation. I was sort of 80 or 90% deaf, which affected my balance, and also it prevented. I didn't talk for ages because of this. And I think Mum took me to multiple doctors and said, he's a lovely little boy, Mrs. Hunt, there's nothing wrong with him. And then eventually the doctor finally said, okay, I think there is something wrong with this child. So I've actually seen a home video of me, and I was sort of all over the place, crashing into things. Dribbling mess.
Considering that you ended up in racing cars on the grid, competing professionally, as well as in polo, it's quite the difference from there to there.
Yeah. I guess I had to be able to catch up rather fast for it. After the operation, it sort of cleared my... I think it was, blocked up sinuses, which made blocked up ears as well, or something like that. But I was a dribbling mess with no balance, or very little balance, basically. But the memories from home, I remember the house quite well. I remember spag bowl was one of Dad's favourite meals. I remember he had his own special bowl for that meal. I remember a few times going to the Grand Prix, which I presumed it was, I think pretty sure it was Silverstone. I don't think we would have travelled overseas with him, when he was commentating, but I think we probably went to Silverstone a few times. What else can I remember? His A35 van. We had the indicator up here, and my brother and I used to fight over who gets to put the indicator on. Just normal memories. And obviously, at that age, I was completely unaware of that my father was anything special, as one would be at 5, I suppose. And actually, I didn't really know that he was anything special until much later on. Even when I started racing, up until the point when we started racing, I knew he was a world champion, but I didn't really quite understand the gravity of his fame and his popularity until when I started racing myself. Then being approached by so many journalists and photographers and stuff, then I really kind of in the spotlight a bit, and I realised he was quite special.
I always look for like a pivotal story or a pivotal moment that kind of opens that window and makes us kind of realise those kind of things in those moments. And for me, I heard you talk about when you're at Donington in one of your first races, and it's only when you kind of had that realisation of who he was that it kind of manifested into a pressure that you felt on yourself when you're actually racing. Because weren't you 2 seconds off your pace in the race versus your practice?
Yeah.
Is that what changed?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, one's mental state is a real bugger, because if I could have just not put that pressure on myself. Because I'm an awful lot better. But yeah, I felt this. Yeah, the pressure came from myself, but it was no one actually pressuring me. But I think it's just lots of people watching me, and I didn't really know how to cope with it. I'd never been taught how to cope with it, and I wasn't expecting it. So,
do you think it would have been even harder if the movie had been out by then?
I don't know, because maybe I would have been more prepared for it then, or I could have been harder. I don't know.
I think when people look at Formula One drivers like they would do your dad in the movie, or Senna, or any of the guys that now clipping on their Richard Millets before their interviews, like at the end of the race, they would think that comes with obscene wealth, with obscene gain, and that would kind of be passed down to the kind of future generations. But that wasn't necessarily the story for you guys, was it? You've actually had it quite hard.
Financially?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Dad didn't... In the 70s, they certainly didn't earn anything like they do nowadays. I think Dad, after 76, then he was obviously earning quite well, but it was only 3 years after that he raced for, 2.5 seasons. And then he wasn't very good with his money, really. I think he just made some bad investments or got screwed. I don't know the details, but basically when he died, he was in debt, and it was his life insurance that covered my education. Was
you quite surprised by that, although you can't really grasp that when you're 5?
No, I had no idea. I was completely oblivious.
So your mum then pivoted and put you into the kind of horse side of things, Polo?
Exactly, yeah.
And when did you realise that wasn't necessarily for you? Because I know you were really good at it and you want to get back into it now, so it's clearly a passion, but you still had to pursue that goal of racing. Yeah,
I mean, it was just kind of fate intervening, really. On the same day of deciding to stop the polo, at least pause it for now, I was invited to Goodwood that same day, and the reason was we ran out of money, ran out of horsepower. Well, I didn't really have a choice. It was, we've got to sell what's left of the horses. I can't play on them anymore after this season, and so we got to sell them because my level had gone up, and my horses, as they get older, go down. So I needed fresh horses up here, which would be, best part of £500,000 for a full string of good horses, good youngsters. Yeah, you need 6 or 7 at that level. You probably want to be, if you're buying really good young horses to keep you going for a few years. The best part of £100,000 each. Yeah.
And that made you pivot into something that's equally as expensive as in motorsports. Did you have any idea?
No, I didn't know. I was completely ignorant. I thought, great, I'll go racing, I'll get paid, and it'll be wonderful. How wrong was I? No, I didn't know that the drivers had to find the money themselves.
So talk to me about how you got to the grid. What made you get to the grid?
So first of all, I was invited to the Goodwood Festival Speed. Like I said, that same day, it was a Friday evening. I popped into town to go and rent a movie, and I went to going to the pub for a pint, bumped into a friend, and he said, come to Goodwood next day. So I did. And they put me in a racing car. It was Jody Kidd, actually. He was the boyfriend of Jody Kidd at the time. And Jody said, if you want to drive the car, go ahead. So great, off I went. And I thought, well, this is a lot of fun, and I like this.
See, anyone listening to that now, when they think of Goodwood and all the marshals up the hill and the hay bales and the all kinds of colours of different wrist passes to get here, there and everywhere, they wouldn't necessarily think that if they just turn up at Festival of Speed, they'd end up in a racing car going up a hill.
Well, I didn't either. I don't think Maserati did. And it was just very spur of the moment. I was wearing Jodie's overalls pretending to be her. I didn't have a racing license at all. Goodwood didn't know about this.
And you'd only passed your driving test a few weeks prior?
Yeah, it must have been. Weeks or a couple of months. Yeah, not long at all.
And you found yourself going up the hill in a Maserati. So, what were you like in that moment? Were you just full of laughs, lapping it up, or what was going through your head?
Major adrenaline, because I'd never driven a car like this before. I was aware of the power of, although compared to the GC4, so compared to what I've been racing now recently, it was relatively slow. But compared to my road car, it was very, very fast. And I was aware that there were a lot of fans, a lot of people watching, so I didn't want to crash it. But yeah, wow. I mean, feeling the power of that and the noise and everything, and the smells. I think a lot of the smells of the race of the cars may have brought back some nostalgic memories from being at racetracks with Dad. And yeah, it was just really, really exciting. And then the chap who invited me, and this guy called Andrea, he was ex-racing driver turned polo player, and he said to me, "Fred, you're not a bad polo player, but you haven't got the money for it, and you've got a farm behind you. So, I suggest you go racing. If you're good at it and you like it, with your name, you could probably make a career out of it." So I thought, well, that sounds pretty sensible, better than getting an office job or some other 9 to 5, because I really didn't want to do that. So I rang my uncle, his dad's little brother, and I said, "This is what's happened. This is what I'd like to do. How do I go about it?"
And why did he know?
So David Hunt, Dad's youngest brother, raced and got up to Formula 3000. I think tested for F1 Benetton, but didn't quite get any further than that. So he was experienced in the sport, and was still in the industry as well, with Team Lotus and various other things.
So what was his reaction to hearing that you wanted to get into a racing car?
The first thing he said was, "Ring me back in a week if you're still serious."
And did that only increase the hunger and the passion over that week to want to do it?
Probably. I can't really remember, but I remember, putting the horse on the market straight away, and I rang back a few days later and I said, "Yeah, no, the horse is for sale. I'm serious."
Many of you might not know this, but away from the recordings that I do in my van studios, I've actually got a digital marketing agency. Now, we specialise in a lot of automotive clients, but we cover everything really. Our team is made up of PPC specialists, SEO specialists, and the most talented designers I've ever seen, which have done work like the Starnagloss website, the TWR website, and many more. We've actually just built Icon Box for the Auto Alex crew as well, meaning that people that watch their channel can buy their favourite merch seamlessly and in style. So if you're interested in starting a project and you'd love to speak to us, just tap the link below and let's hop on a call.
So how did that transpire from you getting there to actually being on the grid? How much money did you need to find, and what did you first get into?
So we looked at 3 championships. Well, firstly, to do my license at Silverstone, did my ARDS test at Silverstone, and then I did a Formula Ford test and a Formula Palmer Audi test in the UK. Then I went to Malaysia because Uncle Dave had a friend there. He's still there actually, and I did some Formula BMW testing. So I went there for 3.5 weeks, and I did, I think, a good 10 days testing. So that was my first real time to get to know a car properly. And it was, in hindsight, considering the experience I had, I was actually a lot quicker than I realised at the time, but no one really ever told me that. I was half a second off, and I knew enough to know that half a second is a long way from the front row in most categories. That's all I was thinking about. But no one ever told me, actually, Fred, with this level of experience, that's pretty impressive.
Because you'd never had any formal training?
Nothing. I mean, when I started, I didn't even know there was a difference between a road tire and a racing tire. I was so ignorant. I knew nothing about cars.
And never been in a kart?
Never been in a kart. Well, a few pairs you go, 4 strokes, but not for racing cars.
Did you feel that it came naturally? Were you enjoying being in the car?
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. I remember the test at Snetterton in a Formula Ford, and it was... actually, was this my first test, or was this later on? I can't remember, but I think this was maybe after. I think this was after Malaysia. So that was 2006 December. So this must have been January, February, or March. And the Formula Ford with no downforce slides around a lot. I remember sort of having to point the car a few feet inside the apex to hit the apex, because they slide out. But it came really well to me. I think it was wet to begin with, and it started drying out, and they put me on slicks. I was the fastest on the track. There were none of last season's drivers, or maybe 1 or 2, but none of the front runners. But there were guys that had been karting for several years and coming to Formula Ford. No, I think I was the fastest on the circuit, in the Formula Fords at least. And so they put me onto slicks, and inevitably I crashed pretty quick on a drying track in slicks, which caused a bit of an argument between my uncle and the team. But I just felt pretty comfortable in the car.
Do you believe in natural talent? Do you believe it is handed down, raw speed?
I don't know if it's hereditary or not. It probably is. But yeah, some people, can try for a long, long time and never get it, and never be that quick.
Did you get more help with the name behind you because people wanted you to get into those racing seats, or did you think that it was going to be a lot easier than it actually was?
Yeah, I certainly underestimated how hard it would be to find the sponsorship and everything. I was pretty lucky in the first season. I got help from a few family friends, and I had a few small commercial sponsors, but most of it was donations essentially. And actually, one of the partners of the team, one of the owners of the team, he invested with a commercial gain to that. And so it was a combination of things, but there weren't, I think only 10% of the budget was actual, stickers on the car, if you know what I mean.
And was that with
various brands
belief that you would have this hereditary raw talent, raw speed?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're going to those investors, you go into that team like, no, never. I've never karted. I've never had that experience. Never had anything. But I am a Hunt.
Yeah, well, I think my uncle did most of the talking, to be honest. And he was in that sponsorship industry. I think he was better at marketing than he was at driving himself. I think he admitted that. So he was leading most of the negotiations. But yeah, I mean, I was aware that I was fairly quick, when I saw the lap times compared to other drivers. And actually, looking back in Malaysia, there was myself, one experienced young driver, Jasmine Jafar. He's now in World Endurance Championship, and a few other drivers. And I think I was quicker than all the others, if I remember rightly. Maybe one that was had some experience, who was quicker than me, but all the other new drivers weren't as quick as me. So that gave me some confidence.
You're on a build, you're building confidence, you're building speed, you realise you're quick. What was the bit that then suddenly it got really hard?
Yeah, that was I think at the first race at Donington. Well, it was the second race of the season. We missed the first race of the season. I was at Alton Park. And the first race at Donington, I think it was then. It was just so many people watching me, really, and photographers and journalists. And I was so sort of wrapped up in my own emotions that I didn't even see the bloody checkered flag. I did 2 extra laps in the first race. Yeah. Well, second race, because the first race I crashed and took out 5 cars. Made a hell of a start. It's hilarious. I qualified about 18th, I think, and got the clutch just right, launched off the line. So before the braking zone, I already passed about a few cars, and then everyone went to the inside, cover the inside. I stayed on the outside and braked where I could brake, because there was no one preventing me, making me brake earlier. And so I passed several more cars there, and then carried nice speed into the corner. And so I think I was up to about 6th or 7th by the halfway through the first corner. But then I just dipped a tyre on the exit on the grass, and then which turned me into the pack and spun me into the pack and took out 4 or 5 other cars. So it was a bit of a and front page of Motorsport News. It's Hunt the Shunt Junior. So thanks for that, guys.
How did that transpire into how you were feeling? Because was the goal already sitting in that car to get to Formula One?
It was then, yeah, absolutely. No, but the media coverage, being called Hunt the Shunt Junior, didn't help me at all. Yeah, it was a frustrating time. I didn't know my own mind very well then. I'm still only learning it now. I think as we all are, but as we do over the course of our life. But it's I just couldn't really understand what was going on in my head. And I didn't know it was pressure. I didn't know what to do. But now it took me quite a few years. I stopped racing in 2009 because of this issue. It only got worse and worse. And in 2009, 2.5 years after starting, I stopped. And then in 2014, and that's when I came back, and I was living in Argentina at the time, and I went to a race meeting. I was a spectator, and that's when I decided, maybe I can race again. And by that time, I'd processed a lot of information in my mind, and I'd matured a lot.
So you still wanted to go racing?
Yeah.
You still wanted to make it happen. So how did you start that again?
Well, I tried to find sponsorship in Argentina to race in their TC2000 series over there. I now knew that Formula One was pretty much impossible, so I wasn't aiming for that. So I thought, what's the next best thing? It would be either high-level touring cars or Le Mans endurance racing. So I thought, I wanted to stay in Argentina, but anyway, couldn't find enough budget out there. I found some, but not enough. So I came back to the UK, and what was my first thing I raced? I did a Formula Ford race just to sort of get the dust off, and that went really well. Or sadly, the engine was down on power, so the finishing result wasn't very good. I know didn't actually finish the race because there was I think I got tagged from someone else and spun around. But anyway, the point was my mind was better, and I was matching my own pace. If not, I was even getting quicker and quicker in the races, and so that gave me a lot of confidence boost. So I can actually do this. I was right. I have matured enough, and then after that. Most of the time, I was getting quicker and quicker. And then sadly, later that year, this is 2014, I did the MRF Championship. But only 2 months before that started, my mum passed away. And I'll confess, I drank too much and I was feeling ghastly. And so my head was not good in these races either. And I wasn't very comfortable in the cars in the MRF. For some reason, I just couldn't seem to find grip. And then when I was miles off the pace, then again, the mental demons came back and no self-belief. And it all went wrong again a bit. But then what was the next 24?
But what I find fascinating about that timestamp for a minute, that date, 2014, is that's a year after Rush was released.
Mm.
So was watching that film, even though you weren't necessarily pleased with how Chris Hemsworth played your father, was there still a resurgence to get back in a car? And did any of it come from watching Rush?
Yeah, I think so. Well, not an encouragement to get back in the car just from watching the film, but the film made me aware that, if Dad's more, the Hunt name is now more in the spotlight again, that might be more attractive. I might be now a little bit more attractive to sponsors again, just from a pure sort of marketing point of view. So that's it. It was encouraging from the movie coming out for sure.
Just take me to 2013, the year before that race in Argentina, presumably.
Mm.
The film comes out. How much consultation before Rush came out did they actually do with you? Did they? Nothing.
No, not with. I mean, my brother and I weren't alive in those days, so none with us. But they did speak to my uncle, two of my uncles they were talking to, and the McLarens. Obviously other people, but within the family, the producers spoke to my uncles, to David and Norm, or Peter is his actual name. But Tom and I, my brother, we weren't involved at all.
Because I heard that the actor that played Niki Lauda actually spent 2 weeks living with him, like to get inside the mind of him before playing that part.
Yes.
Where it seems like that wasn't necessarily done on the side of you.
Well, that's what upset me a little bit about Chris. I don't think he did any research. Well, he didn't contact the family once to try and learn a bit about the personality, and that's what I thought. Either he's winging this, or he's been directed to act like that in that way. And I don't know which one it was, but the fact that he didn't contact the family once, and in contrast, Daniel Brawl lived with Nicky for a couple of weeks to really do some proper homework, and I thought, well, there's quite a difference in professionalism there.
See, when I sit down to watch a film, if it's like a big film, that's something that could be impactful, for argument's sake, like I love Formula One, so when I went to go and watch the F1 movie recently, I was almost like, right, this better be good because I love this sport.
Yeah.
So this better be good. I'm about to spend 2 hours of my life in this cinema. This better be good. And to be fair, I really enjoyed it.
You did like it? Good.
I did really like it. But for you, where were you? Like, just set the scene, 'cause there might be some gold in there. Like, where were you when you first sat down to watch that film? How did you feel? Was there like a sense of, bloody hope this is good?
I think so, yeah. That was at the premiere in London, Leicester Square, where I first saw it. And it was quite a big event, red carpet and all that stuff. I think there was... I can't really remember what I thought sort of in the moment watching the film, but I do... I remember getting very emotional at the end of the film because it showed pictures of actual Dad. And I wasn't expecting that, and so I needed a few minutes alone after that. But I think it may have been after the second time watching it, and I really sort of started to look at it with a different, when you first see something, and particularly with all that going on around you, at a big London premiere. But to be honest, I can't remember that well.
So did that make you...
I got really drunk that night at the party, and that's probably wiped a bit of my memory, I suppose.
But did that make you miss him more, or miss the fact that you hadn't had that time with him more?
I don't know. I don't really think about that. I mean, it's life. People live and they die. And then when people die, it's very sad. But it is part of life, something we've all got to do. And it's strange that we don't actually talk about it more. It's really odd because it's something that we all have to do. One of the only things that we all do the same is dying, but we don't talk about that. But no, I've just sort of accepted it. I mean, maybe there is some subconscious a resentment for Dad for abandoning me, but no, nothing conscious.
What was the first time that you met Niki Lauda? When was the first time you met Niki Lauda? Because I saw an interview that you actually did with him, with, I think it was Formula One themselves. I've seen you meet him. I think you were in the Mercedes F1 garage. But had you met him prior to watching the film?
Briefly at Hockenheim 2009 when I was in the Formula ADAC Masters. Matthias, his son, was in the DTM. And yeah, Nicky was there and we met. We had a quick chat on the grid. And actually, the first thing he said to me before he even shook my hand, just as he sort of got to me, he said, the first words he ever said to me was, "I loved your father." And that was very emotional. If you're enjoying the episode of Road to Success, please like and subscribe to the channel. And if you fancy taking a closer look at my fashion brand, it is lkhunt.com.
Do you think they, in the film, made it out to be more of a hatred than it actually was?
Absolutely. That's one of the details, the main details that they changed, which I thought was really daft. Dad and Nicky were really good friends. They were very close friends, and they showed in the movie in the meeting in Formula 3, but the truth is they arrived at that race together in the same car coming from the same flat. And I verified this with Nicky. I said, I heard that you and Dad lived together. And he said, yeah, not full time, but we did share a flat every now and again.
Did you ever ask Nicky what he thought of the film?
I think I probably did. No, I can't remember any unusual answer. I think he probably said, yeah, it was good.
The first time,
I can't remember.
The first time you had a proper conversation with him was that sit down for like Formula One. How did that happen? Did they call you up to kind of bring you two together for that chat?
Can't remember who organised it. No, the first one was... So, we did a documentary with Matthias Loud and myself and Matthias racing against each other. And I think it was the guy that organised that put Nicky and I together just some nice content, really, I suppose. And just, that's what they wanted. And it's great for me to have a good chat with Nicky.
So, was that on your racing from kind of 2014 onwards where we were getting with that there? Was that when, like, even though, yeah, she got spun out of the first race, did you get any further with that kind of stuff?
Sorry,
you're racing in 2014. You got, say, spun out on the first race. What was it like then after that?
So I had the confidence up because, like I said, my head was better, although the car wasn't great because the engine was down on power, and then I got tagged from from behind that spun me around. But anyway, my confidence was up because I wasn't putting the pressure on myself like I did before. But then, like I said, I got to the MRF Championship later that year, which was December 2014, only a couple of months after Mum died. And my head was all over the place again, but understandably. And then I got in a GT car later in 2015, and I was good again in terms of my lap times were improving during the race rather than going all over the place, and I could focus and I could concentrate on my own race rather than what's going wrong and who's watching me and who's quicker than me and all the other thoughts that go through a negative head, as it were.
Was that one of the favourite series you raced in then?
My favourite is definitely the LMP3 cars. Well, no, looking back, I mean, I would love to race the classic, the Formula Fords again, the originals, because they are so much fun. I suppose Formula Ford and LMP3 have been my most enjoyable cars. LMP3 are really nice, and I've had some success in those recently. Because
you raced at Le Mans as well, right?
Yeah, not in the full 24-hour race, but it was the Le Mans Cup, and we did that full season in 2022. I had my first taste actually in an LMP3 in Estoril, must have been 2018, I think. And then 2019, I raced at Le Mans in the Le Mans Cup in just a one-off race. And it was quite good. That was my first taste of Le Mans, and it was quite quick, and I really enjoyed it. I love Le Mans; it's a hell of a circuit. And then 2022, I managed to get a full season with a decent team, and we did the full season. We came second in the championship, and we won the last race of the season. We had 3 other podiums that year. We had a race win we did one race in the German Prototype Cup, and we had a first and third, I think, in the 2 races there. And yeah, I mean, I think we could have won the championship in 2022 if we had some pre-season testing, but all our testing got COVID cancelled and then snowed off, and so we turned up to the first race with a shopping trolley because the team had not run an LMP3 car before. They were a GT team, Ryder Engineering, so they didn't, they were guessing how to set it up, and so the car wasn't very competitive for the first race. And the second race, we had a couple of got a penalty. That was a mistake by ourselves, and we had some brake problems during the practice. We didn't have much practice, but we crossed the line in fourth, but then got penalised, so no points there. So we actually on paper finished 19th because we pitted too early, I think a minute too early. That was the problem. And then the third race, which was Le Mans, then we were on the podium. And I think we could have won both races. We were so far ahead, sort of over after mid distance, after I handed the car over to my teammate. But then they brought out the safety car and bunched everyone up together. So we had a 10 or 20 second lead. But then they brought out the safety car and bunched everyone up together, and that happened several times throughout the season, which was bloody annoying when you build up a 20, 30 second lead, which I did at the beginning, and then they bring out the safety car and it gets ruined. So we could have easily had 3 wins that season had they not been safety cars.
Was that podium like a highlight?
That was
moment.
Yeah.
What did that feel like standing on there? Because when you watch the film and you look back at some of those times, and I specifically pick out the big bouquet rings of flowers that used to go round the neck when drivers won, the bottle of champagne. Was that finally that moment that you could be like, oh my God, we're close to winning now, we're on the podium?
It was, yeah, massive confidence boost. I think, for my teammate as well, Matt, is a lovely guy. Huge moment. I think it was a good party that night.
I was about to say, do you have your dad's celebration skills?
Maybe.
Talk us through the evening.
I can't remember.
You can't remember?
No, I remember being really hungover the next day. I remember drinking champagne in the truck with the team after in the evening, and then the blur after that.
That does sound like a hunt, to be fair. But this is why I'm kind of fascinated by the other side of your life, which is the kind of peaceful existence up on the farm. I've heard you talk so passionately about your pigs, about your animals, about everything that goes on up there. And it couldn't really be, to a lot of people, further away from those celebratory moments after podium in at Le Mans. They're so kind of far away from each other. What was the reason that you decided to purchase a farm up in Scotland?
It was very spontaneous. I had essentially a job offer up there. I mean, I went up there anyway, but this was during COVID times. All the sponsors had pulled out because of COVID, and racing had looked like it was coming to an end.
And that's where your income had been coming from, was the racing.
Yeah. So I was working for a friend on a sporting estate in Scotland, and then he invited me to come and do a work, run a business with him on the Isle of Bute, and so I said yes, and so I moved over, bought a place on the Bute, and it was actually funny that the house I've got now I'd seen 6 months before from the top of the hill, not realising that it was empty, and at that time not realising that I was going to plan to move to Scotland. But I thought, the lucky bugger that lives there, I'll give my left arm for that. And then 6 months later, that house was mine.
So why was that? What made you think that?
Just the remote location of it, and it's just a little farm in the middle of in its own glen, no neighbours. Well, there is one other farm, just 3/4 of a mile further up the glen, but it's just peaceful and quiet, but not so remote. It's not like I'm several hours drive into the Highlands. I'm still within 2 hours of Glasgow and Glasgow Airport, 10 minutes from a town. I've got the sea around me. I like being near the sea. I'm not really much of a sailor or anything like that, but I do like the ocean. It just had lots of things that I liked, and the price of the property was very attractive as well. And I thought, this is a nice amount of land that I can, have my own. I can feed myself, which is also attractive to me because I don't trust what's in supermarket food.
Do you think that would be any similarity with what you know about your dad? Could you ever have seen, from what you know, your dad doing something like that?
I mean, your dad was a bit of a nonconformist, so he could have done, but he wasn't really much of a countryman. My dad, he was more of a townie, I suppose, than he was. I don't think he would be a bit of it.
So do you think that side comes from your mother?
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
So talk us through the farm. What's on it? What have you currently got? And how much of your life does that take up?
Pigs, sheep, and poultry, and a vegetable patch. And the veggie patch is actually the most time-consuming of all of them. It's the weeding. If you're growing organic, with no spraying, not spraying anything. You've got to pick the bloody weeds by hand, and it is a pain in the arse, but you've got to keep on top of them, otherwise you end up with a jungle of weeds. It's a nightmare. So that's the most time consuming for sure. And the hardest work is just growing the vegetables, but it's really rewarding. I buy very little from the supermarket these days, just dairy and tobacco basically, and just salt and spices. Everything else is from the farm.
So you finished picking and eating from the farm, or there's never a finish really, is there? And in between that, you get in the car or get on a plane and come down and go racing.
Mm-hmm.
How frequent is that?
Well, sadly, I haven't actually raced since 2023. I mean, I plan to. I would like to race more, but I'm focusing on other businesses now because I'm getting on a bit for a professional driver, and I've got to make some money. So that's why I launched a fashion brand, which is what I'm wearing now, 2 years ago with a friend of mine. And so that's the main focus now. But I'm still keeping my ears open for sponsors and teams. If I can race, if I get the opportunity, I will. I'd love to.
So what makes you passionate about fashion?
To be honest, I've never actually been that into fashion. But I do. My friend presented me with the idea. We met in 2014 in that MRF championship, and he came up with the idea, and then I actually just really like the idea of it. So it's all handmade with natural fabrics, and so we want to be as sustainable as one can be in this world. So everything you see here is all natural. It's all silk linen, silk threads. Apart from the metal, which one could argue, I think there might be a tiny bit of polyester in this zip, which we didn't make ourselves. But apart from that, it's 100% natural fabric, and it's art. And I love wildlife, and the initial concept, which is still our main thing, is what based around wildlife. So I thought, well, this is wonderful because I need to make a business, I need to run a business, I need to make some money. I don't want to get a proper job. I love the idea of it, and then I never realised that I would actually have a bit of a creative side of me, and I'm really getting into it, enjoying the creative side of it now, the designing of the clothes. So a bit like motorsport, it never crossed my mind before, but once I got into it, I really enjoyed it.
I want to go back to Nikki for a second, because you spoke about life and death earlier, and how that we should probably talk about that a little bit more, and how that's a thing that everybody kind of has in common. What was that like for you when you heard that Nikki had passed?
It was upsetting, but I didn't know him. I wasn't close to him, so yeah. I mean, I'm more now when someone passes. I don't think of the person that's passed. I think of the person who's left behind and how they're coping, because it's pretty tough for people. Because I think we are unprepared for it, and I think a lot of people still believe. Well, a lot of people do believe that this is it. When we die, that's it. It's game over. And I know that not to be true. I can't explain how I know that, but I do know that. We have an eternal soul, so that's why death to me isn't certainly not the end of the world. It's just the next step. But the people that don't have my faith, it's very hard for them. So when someone dies, I more think about the people they've left behind rather than the actual person that's now in a peaceful state.
Do you think your dad's biggest smile moment looking down would have been that podium at Le Mans?
No. I think my own spiritual growth would be what I'd be most proud of, I think.
Being on the farm up in Scotland, does that give you a sense of contentment, being able to provide for yourself, being able to feed yourself, all the rest of it? Do you find peace in that, the contentment
and security?
of it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
How quiet is it up there?
Silent. I mean, the fields around me are occupied by tenant farmers, so I hear their quad bikes and stuff, sometimes, and there's a bit of planting going on the field on the hill behind me. So there's tractors and stuff going up, but it's quiet.
I think what I'm fascinated by is we spoke about earlier kind of natural talent being passed down as like potentially hereditary. Like you get in the car and you just know the feel. When I watch and have seen the videos and images of what your dad was like as a person, I can't necessarily imagine him to cope in, say, such a peaceful environment with like no people, nobody around. And I know you said a lot of that comes from your mother with a love of horses, but do you think he would have coped from what you know?
I don't know. Probably, yeah. I think anyone can cope. I mean, well, I wouldn't want to be up there 12 months of the year continuously. I do get cabin fever for sure. I miss my friends. I miss socialising. On the island, yeah, I've got some friends there, but they're not close mates. So, yeah, I actually didn't realise I'm getting cabin fever until I leave the place. This year, I spent more time there this summer than I have in the past 5 years since I moved up there. And when I've left, come down south or gone abroad, I was like, whew, actually, cracky.
So does it make you want to come back down?
No, not to live permanently. No, there's way too much people and traffic down here, and there's new buildings going up everywhere, which breaks my heart when I see this lovely countryside. And some people call it progress and development. I see it as destruction.
So
it upsets me.
Do you think the key to happiness for you is peace?
I think it's key to happiness for anyone, isn't it?
It depends, because if someone's chasing something competitive in terms of a title or a world championship, sometimes the key to happiness is actually pushing through peace and going through absolute terror in some cases to just get to the thing that they think will give them peace. So maybe not necessarily.
I mean, yeah, if some people are satisfied once they've reached that target and that gives them peace, then great. But I think a lot of people, they might reach that goal and then realise, well, actually, they're still not quite content. They've got to go on to do other things. I mean, so many people, after their retirement, they carry on doing other things or trying to make more money and all sorts of things. So I think we've got to learn to enjoy the ride rather than, it's about the journey, not the destination.
Do you think that there's still some journey to be had with you in racing?
Yeah, I like to think so, yeah.
Is there something that you would love to do that you still think is achievable that you haven't yet done yet?
Yeah, Le Mans 24 Hour, which I haven't done yet. I really want to do that. And other endurance races, I'd love to race at Bathurst, for example. I haven't driven around Nürburgring yet. The Nordschleife, I'd love to do that. And LMP2, I've tested an LMP2 once, which was wonderful, but they're a lot faster than an LMP3 car, and I'd like to get to that level.
Do you still watch Formula One?
Yeah.
What do you think of the current spread of drivers? Who springs to mind that has the talent that you believe your dad to have had?
Well, firstly, I think Max passes all drivers on the grid and most drivers that ever existed. I think he's just phenomenal. He really is. But I think there's a really high standard of driving now. They're all bloody good. They're all really, really quick. I mean, Lando and Oscar, really on it. You've got Lewis, Lewis is Lewis. We all know nothing needs to be said more there. He's a hell of a driver. And the Clark, they're all really good. Alonso's still, he's ancient now, but he's still going strong. It's incredible, yeah.
When you see what's happened to Oscar in the last few races, and we're recording this podcast with, say, I think it's 4 left at the end of the season, just off the back of Brazil, do you see the pressure on him like it was for you when you hopped in that car at Donington?
Possibly, yeah. And Lando earlier on in the season, I can see it now that in drivers, it's a mental thing, is it? He's lucky. He's not lucky. He's a few tenths of his pace, but I guess once I was on my first season, my nerves would put me 2 seconds off my pace, and his nerve put him 2/10 off his pace because he's got it so drilled into his muscular memory. But yeah, I mean, the crash he had in the sprint race, that may have been, I don't know, not thinking 100% clearly because of his nerves. I don't know.
You're very authentic, and what I mean by that as well is F1 in the past used to be extremely authentic. Drivers sat on the wall smoking a fag after a race, or they've got their girls around them, and it was just so much more of a theatre almost. There was so much kind of passion and authenticity coming through. Does it frustrate you when you watch the drivers these days that have been like media trained to the hilts, not actually being them true selves in front of camera?
Yeah, it does. It is a shame, but it's because of the media. That's the only reason. They can't say anything without it getting twisted around and taken out of context. It's just the journalists can't be trusted. Simple as that.
Do you think you would be able to conform to such media standards to present yourself in such a way, or do you think you'd still be the guy smoking a fag on the wall?
Well, if I was at that level, I'd have to stop smoking. I don't think I could be fit enough. But yeah, I'd like to. But if I were still smoking, no, I wouldn't hide it. But you've got to. Yeah, the media training. I would probably. Yeah, because I am very open and honest. I could easily open my mouth and say the wrong thing without thinking it through properly. So I'd probably have a team member on either side with a stick ready to clout me if I was about to say something stupid.
Well, I think it's been fascinating to hear your story of why racing matters to you, what you felt getting in a car in those earliest times, everything that you're doing now, like your fashion brand, and why you seek peace up in the remote areas of Scotland. And you also live a life at more than 100 mile an hour. So I just want to say thank you for joining me so much on Road to Success, and hopefully we'll see you back here in the future.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks.